Coming up on Big Ten Today, for the third straight Tuesday, we're handing out some hardware, hockey awards. Plus, Paul Caponigri weighs in on the winners. And we're 2 days away from the Big Ten tipping things off in the NCAA Tourney. Trent Meacham stops by to help us navigate the brackets. It's all on Big Ten Today, now. Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today on a Tuesday. We are presented by Walmart, and we are delighted to have you with us. We had the Women's Hoops Awards 2 weeks ago. We had the Men's Hoops Awards last week, and today it is the hockey. Paul Caponigri here to help us sort through all of this, and so many good performances in the conference this year. Interested to get your take on what the voters decided on.
I mean, it's interesting because I think they were very even in terms of who was nominated. I think you could have picked any of them and you have a really good case for them all. So, yes, everyone's going to be voting for their guy or, wanting their guy to get it. Obviously, only one guy could do it, but I think the league is so healthy right now and has so many good players. I think that's a good problem to have.
All right, so who is the best among those good players? Well, that is our big story. We start with the Big Ten Player of the Year, and that award goes to Michigan State's Isaac Howard, the conference's most prolific goal scorer. Howard has lit the lamp 24 times and counting, tied for third nationally, had the game winner on Saturday, which sent MSU into the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. His 33 points in conference play led the Big Ten. And Howard headlining the All-Big Ten first team. It is a group that also includes Minnesota's Jimmy Snuggerud and Penn State's Aiden Fink up front, both of whom finished in the top 5 nationally in points. The first-team defenseman, Howard's teammate Matt Bascal and Sam Rinzel of Minnesota, and Michigan State's Trey Augustine is between the pipes. All right, let's start with Howard. Has really come into his own this year. He upped his goal scoring significantly this season. As you mentioned, there are a ton of good players. You could have made the argument for several of them. We saw the players on that first team. Is this the right choice here? And give us some insight into Howard's year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the best player on the best team. It didn't hurt that he scored the one goal last week. Obviously, the awards were done for regular season, but he's a guy that I think when I talked to head coach Adam Nightingale before the season, I said, I feel like he's the one guy that could elevate to superstardom. And he agreed with me. He just said, it's funny, he didn't talk about points and assists and goals. He talked about his other parts of his game. And I think that's a little bit of an underrated part, is the defense, the checking, being tough to play against. Because, scoring gets all the praise. But I feel like all of his game came around, and then that helped his scoring. I think he got really confident. And like you said, I mean, Aiden Fink and Jimmy Snuggerud were fantastic players. I mean, you had Trey Augustine on his team maybe fighting for that Player of the Year. But right. I think when it came down to it, Isaac Howard, I mean, you look at him, he had almost 20 more points than anybody else on his team on a really good team. Right. For him to separate like that really shows his dominance throughout the whole season.
I think it's interesting. One of the things that makes hockey different than football and basketball, certainly the sports that I cover the most, is you have guys who are already draft picks.
Right. Hockey is fun like that.
And it is, but it has to come with a lot of pressure.
Sure.
And you look at him, I mean, a guy who transferred, who started his career, Minnesota, Duluth.
Duluth, yes.
Right. And,
first year.
And didn't have a great first year, and then last year comes in, and I mean, 8 goals, solid.
Right.
But I just wonder sometimes, like, there's so much pressure associated with being a first-round pick, and it feels like this year, kind of for some of the reasons that you talked about, but I just wonder, like, kind of psychologically, how you're able to just say, okay, I'm in the moment here, and I'm going to be the best player I can be right now, and not worry about all that other stuff.
I mean, it is interesting, and I kind of like that about hockey, because baseball kind of does that. They get drafted, but then if they don't go, they go back in.
Right.
You drafted a second and third time, but I mean, I think he has a lot of conversations. He was drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think it's maturity, too. He's turning 21 years old now. I mean, these guys are young guys, and I think it's, like you said, mentality, maturing, knowing you don't have to make a play every shift. I feel like you feel like you got to prove something, right? I got to prove that I was a first-round pick. to the Tampa Bay Lightning and to the rest of the country. And I think you kind of let that go after a while. And then he played for Adam Nightingale previous to college.
Right.
So he had that connection. He came in last year, kind of fell through the water. So this was his first time having back-to-back years in the same situation, just more comfortable. And one of the things he said to me early in the year, I said, hey, so do you talk to Tampa? What do they say? He's like, yeah, they don't really care about my scoring so much. They want to see the little things of my game done, the checking and winning wall battles. And I think that's maybe relaxed. Like, okay, let's do those little things, and then it'll create the big things. And you saw it definitely created those.
It did. He went from 8 goals to 24. So
pretty good.
Yeah, so you triple your goal total. What else on the first team? You mentioned some of the other players, Stuggerud, Fink, guys who had really good years. Augustine.
I mean, Trey Augustine, he looks like a pro. I just think he's 19, just turning 20. He's a draft pick of Detroit. I think he's really stands out. And for me, Aiden Fink and the story of Penn State, the second half of the season, they had no wins in the league until after January, after the Wrigley Field games. And for him to lead the way there, I think he's been consistent throughout the year. But man, he just really stood out and really help them along with their other young players to get them in a possible chance to get to the NCAA tournament.
A really outstanding group, and as you might imagine, it contains some of the other individual award winners. Michigan State's Trey Augustine winning the Big Ten Goaltender of the Year. Augustine led the league in both goals against average and save percentage. He is a finalist for the Sullivan Award, given to the nation's top amateur athlete, was a second-team All-Big Ten pick as a freshman a season ago. Minnesota's Sam Rinzel wins the Defensive Player of the Year. Rinzel led all Big Ten defensemen with 31 points, tallied 10 goals for the Gophers. He's one of just 7 defensemen nationally with at least 30 points, the leader of a Gopher defense that allowed the second fewest goals per game in the Big Ten. Michigan's Michael Hage is the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Scored 13 goals for the Wolverines this season. Got better and better as the year went on, tallying 9 points in Michigan's final 9 games. He's the third Wolverine to win this award in 4 years, joining Luke Hughes and Adam Fantilli. Hage obviously on the all-freshman team as well, although interestingly, he was not a unanimous pick. The 2 defensemen were Cade Christensen of Penn State and Wisconsin's Logan Hensler. Hage joined by a couple other players there, Charlie Serrato, who you see, and Gavin Morrissey, the 3 forwards, and then Cameron Corpy, who started 16 games between the pipes for Michigan. He is the goalie on the all-freshman team. Let's start with Augustine. The stats are really good. You said he was certainly in the discussion for Big Ten Player of the Year, regardless of position. So it seems like you feel like this was somewhat clear-cut, although there were some really good goalies in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was another best goalie on the best team situation. Numbers were really good. His pedigree, aside from just in college. But no, I think Arseny Sergeyev and Logan Turness, 2 guys that just played each other in the semifinals, had fantastic seasons. Logan Turness had a .926 save percentage going into last week's Big Ten semifinal, which is right there with neck and neck with Trey Augustine. He didn't play as many games. He kind of was splitting the net, but he really kind of came on late in the year, just like Arseny Sergeyev really kind of turned their season around at Penn State once he got healthy. So he had some competition, but I think Trey Augustine kind of just consistent all through the year and plays big in big games and has a reputation of that and just continues to build off.
Well, his reputation built partly off Team USA as well, 5-time medal winner with them, a second-round pick of the Red Wings.
2 gold medal winning as World Junior Champion. Pretty good.
Yeah, really, really accomplished player so early in his time at Michigan State. What about Rinzel, Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, a really good offensive player, but I think he got bigger, stronger, more confident defensively too. When you look at Minnesota, yeah, they kind of struggled at the end of the year. I mean, obviously they didn't make it past the first round of the playoffs, but Sam Rinzel was really good the first half. I thought he kept a pretty solid pace the second half, had some other guys like Basgel come on and kind of, put pressure on him to win that award. But I thought throughout the season, Sam Rinzel was the best defenseman, if you want to call that, and he's just really good on the power play, really good at getting the first pass up to his forwards, which is important, kind of an underlining factor for defense. You don't realize how important that is to get the offense going the other direction. He does that really well. And I just think consistency was his thing throughout the season.
A leader of a defense who gives up about 2.5 goals per game.
Right.
Finally, Hayes. What do you make of him as freshman of the year? It was
I think that was a battle.
It's interesting that he was freshman of the year, and yet
Right.
two other guys were unanimous on the all-freshman team, and he was not unanimous on the
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe because there were a few more forwards in that discussion,
Right,
J.J. Weebush from Penn State and a few other guys, but man, he's a silky smooth offensive guy that only is going to get better. I feel like these guys come in, and he's really young, like you said, first-round draft pick. He is going to, keep getting better. I thought those three guys, it was really close. Serrato came on late in the season. I think if you would have added the first round of the playoffs to that story, maybe he takes it because he had 5 points and they swept Michigan. But obviously this is a regular season award. And Gavin Morrissey was probably the most consistent guy. But I think Hage maybe had a little more flash to his game, and I think that helped him. But those guys, that was probably the closest race aside from Player of the Year.
Hage's brother Alexander committed to Michigan as well, so going to be a family affair there for them with the Wolverines. Let's take a look at the second team. It includes a couple of Hage's teammates, T.J. Hughes up front, Ethan Edwards on the back line, Quinn Finley of Wisconsin, and Notre Dame's Cole Knuble are the forwards. Penn State's Simon Mack, the other defenseman, and Penn State's Arseny Sergeyev is the goalie. So what stands out there with the second team?
I mean, a lot of good players that, you're vying for very few spots to get on the first team. I thought that's a good selection. The one thing I want to kind of mention is Quinn Finley, a guy that scored 20 goals, kind of tapered off the end, got injured, but he's already announced that he's coming back for his junior year, which is a great news for Mike Hastings and Wisconsin Badgers, who did not have the best season, but he has already announced his coming back for next year. Love to hear that. I love to see guys that come back and take that extra year. But I love the way T.J. Hughes came on at the end of the season, and then and Edwards for them, older guys. Good to see them get it. And then it was interesting, Sergeyev and Turnus. I felt like that was a good battle for second-team goaltender. And I think, recency bias maybe a little more as Arseny Sergeyev was so good in the second half and elevated that team. I think that would put him over the top.
Well, congratulations to all those award winners. We got lots more to come here on the show. Still some individual hardware to hand out, including the Big Ten Coach of the Year. We will tell you who got the nod, and we will speak with the winner next. Plus, still have some NCAA basketball tourney talk to get to. Technically starts tonight with the first four. We'll dive into the Big Ten action with Trent Meacham in a bit. 13 players named honorable mention all Big Ten. You see the list of them here, a group that includes players from 6 different teams. Plenty more on the all-conference teams on Big10.org, plus everything you need to know to get you set for this weekend's Big Ten championship game, a game that will include the team led by our Big Ten Coach of the Year. And that award goes to Ohio State's Steve Rohlik for the 3rd time in his career, first time in 6 years. Rohlik's Buckeyes will play Michigan State for the Big Ten title Saturday. They were 3rd in the regular season standings, this after finishing last in the conference a season ago and being picked to finish at the bottom of the league this season. Steve Rohlik is today's big interview, and he joins us now. Steve, congratulations. I mentioned you'd won this award a couple times before. What does this one mean? What does it mean to win it this season in particular?
Yeah, first of all, it's very humbling, especially when you're in the best league in the country, and you got 6 of the other best coaches in the country. So you can't do it without great people, and I'm really fortunate to have an incredible staff and support staff, and then you got to have pretty good players. So it certainly means a lot to me, but more importantly, I think this is the biggest team award there is.
Well, let's talk about your team a bit. I mentioned they were picked to finish last in the league in the preseason. What did people miss about Ohio State? Why did they get it so wrong?
I'm not sure they missed. I just think somebody's got to be 1, somebody's got to be 7. And when you play in the best league in the country, it's a starting point. And it doesn't matter what the number says at the beginning of the year. It matters at the end of the year. And that's all we really talked about is let's continue to get better. And I think our team bought in. It's a team, family, and belief, and that's what we come to work with every day.
Well, people who know you really well talk about your passion, and that's the biggest thing that shines through. And it's obvious that this team has picked up on that passion. But I've always thought that one of the most challenging parts of leadership was conveying your passion to the people that you are leading. I think that's really one of the great gifts of outstanding coaches. So how have you done that with this group? How have you gotten them to share the passion that you bring to work every day?
Well, I think first of all, you got to be real. And, I think I'm as real as it gets, and have my emotions on my sleeve a lot. And these guys know that I'll do anything for them, off the rink as well as on the rink. And I think all of my staff can say the same thing. And when you have a staff that comes in and wants to give everything they got for these guys to become better hockey players and better people, these guys believe and they want to give back. And I think that's kind of why you've seen some of the success that we've had.
One of the other reasons is you did extremely well in the portal. That was a big part of this turnaround. And in talking to coaches in various sports, they all mentioned to me that the portal can be really challenging because it's the comparison I've heard is it's like speed dating. You don't really have the same chance to get to know a player who you might have if you recruited them in a more traditional sense. So what was the key this year to finding guys who are the kind of grinders that you like to coach?
Mm-hmm. Well, one, you got to have an incredible staff that has to dive in right away and get to know these guys, as you said, fairly quickly. And we've been fortunate over the years. A lot of these guys, and including this year, have come in, and guys have been leaders, guys have fit in. And I think the most important thing, really, to be honest, is the culture that you have in your own program, the willingness of the players that have been here for a while to accept these guys with open arms and buy into what we're trying to do. And again, these three guys have come in, and it's like they've been here for 4 years. And I think that's really the difference. It's the leadership that's already been here. It's the willingness to open arms to let these guys into this program and the buy-in, and that's what we've had.
Well, it is all combined to get you guys into the Big Ten championship game. You got there in really dramatic fashion. Take me back to Saturday night. You guys are playing Penn State. You're down a goal heading into the third period. You score 3 of the last 4 goals to win it in overtime. And this is no coincidence, Coach. I mean, you guys now have outscored your opponents by 20 goals this year in the third period in overtime, which is kind of a mind-boggling number. What does it say about your team that you finish games in that way?
One, it's a belief. Two, it's goes back to the summer. That's where everything started. Taylor has done an incredible job off the ice with our guys, and it correlates, right? And Saturday night was an incredible game. Guys done an incredible job with Penn State and where they're at, and it was as intense as it gets, right down to the wire. We just kind of had one more bounce, and the puck was on the right guy's tape at the right time. So incredible night, great win for our program.
And so now you head back to the Big Ten championship game. You've been there a couple times. You have never won it. So I know this is a big weekend for you. What's your message to the team about what it's going to take to win and kind of how to approach this week?
Well, first of all, Adam and his staff have done an incredible job. I mean, #1 team in the country for a reason. And we're just looking forward to getting up there. We talked again about competing this week, getting better this week, and going in there trying to be the best version of us. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, and it's going to be a great environment, and we're fortunate to have this opportunity.
Michigan State's won 3 of 4 against you guys this year. Obviously, you just need to beat them once. What did you learn from those games that you can apply to Saturday? What's kind of the formula here?
Well, again, they don't have a lot of holes, but our group's got a lot of belief. And, the biggest thing is obviously if you can play ahead of the sticks. I mean, if we can go up there and get ahead and get the lead and obviously keep the penalties and to a minimum and keep this game 5-on-5, it's going to give ourselves the best chance.
Well, we are all looking forward to it, thrilled to have it on our air here at the Big Ten Network. Steve Rohlik, Big Ten Coach of the Year. Coach, congratulations, and thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time during this busy week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Again, you can see Rohlik's team in action on Saturday, playing for all the Big Ten marbles. Big Ten championship game live from East Lansing. The first puck drops at 7:30 Eastern. Our coverage starts a half hour prior to that. with the pregame show live here on the Big Ten Network, as always, on the Fox Sports app. So we have that to look forward to. I know you're involved in that coverage coming up this weekend. Let's talk about the job that Rohlik did. What stood out?
I think he's just built a really solid house, if you want to say a foundation. I loved how he talked about his recruiting and then also the transfer portal. I mean, look, it's the wild west now, and I think he's built something where you come in and you feel part of it right away. It's not always going to work out. These guys came in and felt really comfortable. I got great goaltending. Like you said, I love how he incorporated everybody from staff, even support staff, not just his assistant coaches, because I think it's built, and a lot of people don't see that. Fans don't get to see that. And he's a very humble guy, and he's fiery, and I love that about him. Because I think when players see your care, and you're not yelling at them, you're yelling at everything else. Like you realize he's that into it. Players kind of get to the point where like, okay, this guy really wants this. Let's go, and you want to play for him. I think that's a small thing that people don't see from behind the scenes. And then just like you got to give the players a lot of credit. Like you said, someone's got to be picked seventh, right? It can't not happen. I think they've got great goaltending. Their transfers came in, and then the development of your own players. I think that just sometimes goes under the radar. Like your guys from freshman to sophomore to even senior getting better. I think you've seen that with them and being patient with players. Like maybe they struggle early, and a lot of teams can give up on guys. He doesn't give up on guys, and you see development happen.
And to your point, you look at his program. He's built a program, right? He's been the Frozen Four. All those things that you don't panic. If you have a down year, you say, okay, where were we before? How do we get back there?
Yeah, and then if you remember, last year they upset in the first round and then took Michigan State to a one-goal game in the semifinals. So, they kind of were building at the end, and it's kind of weird you're building for the next year once kind of this year is kind of a bust, and I think he does a really good job at that.
You mentioned Michigan State. Last year they had Michigan State again here in the championship game. Speaking of building programs, amazing.
Not too bad, right?
Amazing job.
Third year.
They've done in a very short period of time at MSU. So, again, Michigan State's had the upper hand in the games this year, winning 3 of 4, but the beauty of this from Ohio State's point of view, it's one game, right? One game for the championship. What are you watching for?
I think he said it very well in terms of they need to get off to a good start. They would love to get the first goal, right? And staying out of the box. Their penalty kill has not been good. And I think that's something that Michigan State can do to you. Their forecheck is tremendous, and then they can put pressure on your defense to take penalties. You want to play them difficult, but you know what? Hopefully the referees are in the mode of it's championship game. Let's let them play. But those are things. Get off to a good start. Maybe get the lead or keep it tied, and then stay out of the box. Play 5-on-5. So he kind of had the blueprint right there. And then the one big thing and their one win, and I'm going to go break this down a little more on Saturday before the game, is you've got to make things difficult on Trey Augustine. And I don't mean by shooting. I mean by getting guys in front of him and causing traffic in front of him. Because when he sees the puck, I think there's been like 3 or 4 shots where I've seen this year where guys have beaten him clean when he's had a pure look at it. So they've got to get guys like Thompson is great at it. They've got to make life in front of Trey Augustine difficult to be successful and score some goals.
All right. So those are the keys. Again, as you said, pregame coverage starts a half hour before the game with you and Rick on Saturday. So we look forward to that as Michigan State and Ohio State play for the Big Ten Championship. While we're on the topic of coaching, by the way, Notre Dame making it official yesterday. Brock Shahan is now the Fighting Irish's head coach, succeeding Jeff Jackson, who stepped down after a successful run in South Bend, the winningest coach in program history, 9th all-time in Division I. Shahan played for Jackson at Notre Dame, led them to their first ever national championship game berth as a defenseman in 2008. He's been their associate head coach for the last 2 seasons. So this has been the plan all along. He's the head coach in waiting. There's no surprise here to people who have followed it. But what is Notre Dame getting here?
Young, energetic, recruiting. He's already, for people that don't know, college hockey's kind of opened the doors now to the major junior, the Canadian leagues. to be able to play. He's recruited. He has 3 or 4 OHL players coming in already. I mean, he's a winner. He went and in the USHL, Chicago Steel, which is like the premier junior league leading up to college, won a Anderson Cup, which is a regular season, won a Clark Cup for a playoffs, and then he went and coached the Chicago Wolves in the AHL for a year. And quite frankly, probably if this didn't come about, he probably would still be there. So he was kind of on a quick rise up the pro rank there, but I don't think he could pass up being at your alma mater. I mean, what a bonus. He played for Coach Jackson. Now he got to kind of sit behind him for a couple years. You're recruiting while you're coaching there, as you know you're going to be the head coach. So I think it sets up really nice for him. And, I think the young players, they have a great sophomore class that you hope will return. Fisher, Knuble, Nelson, his brother Nelson. So they have some really nice players there. And I think I look forward to seeing what new body happens, because look what Adam Nightingale did 3 years ago at Michigan State when things got a little rough. Things got a little, 20 years is a long time for Coach Jackson, and 601 wins. It's great. So we'll see fresh minds, fresh bodies, and thoughts will do for University of Notre Dame.
And kind of not unlike what you were talking about with Ohio State last year, Notre Dame made a nice little run here in the postseason.
I mean, they gave Michigan State all they could handle last week.
So maybe you have a little bit of momentum.
Especially for those guys, those core guys that are coming back.
Right. All right, well, we will see, but congratulations to Brock Shahan there. We're just days away from learning the NCAA tournament field. Up next, we'll tell you where the Big Ten stands, plus get a little prognostication from Cappy. As we take it a break, here are the Big Ten Sportsmanship Award winners, future Lady Bing candidates, one and all. Congratulations to all the award winners. In case you missed it yesterday, the Big Ten named its all-conference gymnastics team, a team that was determined based on national qualifying scores accumulated during this season. Regular season champ UCLA and Michigan State leading the way with 4 first-team picks each. 16 gymnasts named to the second team. There's an all-freshman team as well. Again, we will guide you to big10.org. Details there. And do not forget, conference will crown a postseason champ this weekend. The Big Ten Gymnastics Championships at Chrysler Arena in Ann Arbor. 3 sessions in all, starting Friday night, continuing Saturday afternoon and evening right here on the Big Ten Network. As always, you can see it all on the Fox Sports app. Let's get back to pucks. Here's where things stand in the pairwise standings heading into college hockey's conference championship weekend. Remember, it's a 16-team field, but the top 16 in the pairwise don't automatically make it, as there are auto bids for conference champs, meaning you can have bid stealers. Michigan State, Minnesota, Ohio State safely in. It gets interesting after that with Penn State and Michigan. Cappy, I'm going to defer to you, but I was floating around.
I mean, I'm looking at it. I still don't know.
I was floating around a couple of websites that give you probabilities.
Sure.
And it sounds like Penn State's probability probably over 80%.
Right.
And Michigan State's maybe in the 20% or below range. So give us the path. Like, how does Penn State get in? How's Michigan?
Penn State has a lot of options. They can afford to have an upset or two. Michigan really cannot.
Okay.
So there's basically three conferences right now that they need to go chalk or have teams that are already in the tournament. So the big one, I think, is Quinnipiac. They lead their conference. They're the number 1 team. They need them to win the conference and not. So if they lose it, they're probably if they would stay above Michigan.
They'd still get in,
and they would hike. And then Dartmouth or Cornell would get that spot. For Penn State, they can have that happen. They can't have 3 things happen. So like they can't run the gauntlet of all 3 sections having a team bid stealer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it gets, the Hockey East one, there's 1 of 4 teams, and the other one is 2. So you have 75% chance it doesn't happen in one, 50 in the other, and then with the Quinnipiac thing, Quinnipiac can lose to Cornell on Friday in the semis, and Penn State would jump them. So that's one thing with Quinnipiac. They could lose one. If they lose the first game, Penn State would jump them.
But you think Quinnipiac would stay ahead of Michigan?
They would. In terms of all the computer rankings I've seen,
Okay.
that's what it shows, and that's kind of the base it's on. It's on computers. It's not
Well,
opinions.
and that is the beauty of it, right? North Carolina can't randomly make it despite not having a good
Right,
resume.
we won't have that kind of
Yes,
argument.
not-
Everyone
not-
will complain about the computer system.
yes,
What,
right.
why does this weigh this much and all that? But
Not that I'm still slightly bitter about what happened on Selection Sunday. All right, great stuff, Captain.
Got it, man.
Thanks a lot. Mentioned it earlier, it bears repeating. Michigan State's Isaac Howard, your Big Ten Player of the Year. Howard, the conference's leading goal scorer, the third Spartan to win this award all time, first in 6 years. Again, leading MSU into the conference championship game against Ohio State on Saturday. Isaac Howard, fresh off the ice at practice and joining us now. Congratulations. What did you think when you heard you'd won this award?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty exciting. Nighty kind of just pulled us in, for our circle after practice and announced it. So it was pretty cool. And, definitely shout out to my teammates that helped me get it.
You're the Big Ten scoring leader, 24 goals on the year. You had 8 last year. To what do you attribute the big jump this year?
I kind of just came in with more of a, goal scoring mentality this year. I wanted to score more and impact the game more. And, I think it's been working.
You spent a year at Minnesota Duluth, and you had some background with Adam Nightingale, and you decided to come to Michigan State. What made him the right coach for you? Why did you want to be a part of the build and play for him?
Yeah, I loved what he started here in his first year, and I was so comfortable with him as a coach. I knew exactly how he likes to play, how he likes to practice. He preaches development a ton, and obviously I'm in a developmental state, so this was a great place I wanted to come and get better. And I've absolutely loved it here. I think the culture, just everything about the place has been so great, and I'm very happy that I knew Nighty before this, and I was able to come in here and make a good transition.
I thought one thing that was really interesting was that you did not make a campus visit before you committed. So I just think that's fascinating, right? Like, yeah, that's where I'm going to be for at least a couple of years, but I haven't seen the place. What was your reaction when you first got there?
I just remember kind of looking it up just online now, seeing the kind of the blueprints of the arena and stuff, and I was kind of blown away. Honestly, I didn't feel like I needed to see it. It looked so unreal, and the campus is so beautiful. I was just excited to get down here and finally check it out in the summertime, and it didn't disappoint.
I want to get into your background a little bit. You grew up in Wisconsin, but not far from Minneapolis, and I gather you grew up in a competitive household with a few brothers. What was the atmosphere like with your brothers growing up?
Yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better way to grow up. I had 3 brothers, 2 older, 1 younger, and I think that helps make me the player I am today. Like, those guys just push me to be better every day in the summer. You're playing 2-on-2 football, knee hockey, street hockey, Nerf, just all that stuff, and just having a blast with it, and always competing. And it was definitely a loud household, but it was unreal.
When did you decide that hockey was definitely the path? You mentioned playing a lot of different sports growing up.
Yeah, it was always my number one. Both my older brothers played and my dad played, and I was obsessed with the NHL when I was young. Loved the Wild. I was on skates at like 2 years old, so it was always my number one sport, something I always wanted to do. I played other sports, had fun with it, but hockey always felt like my main one.
Well, you have never lacked for confidence, and I don't know if all Big Ten fans have seen this, but I wanted to bring out the suit that you wore to the NHL draft a couple of years ago. Not everyone would be comfortable going into public on maybe the biggest night of their life with that look. Isaac, where does that confidence come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just like a swagger I've had my whole life. It was obviously a big night, and I wanted to look good, have some fun with it. I guess I'm not too nervous to do that stuff on a national stage. That was like a fun thing to do, and definitely got a lot. It kind of blew up, and it was fun to see that play out.
Yeah, it did blow up indeed. Made a lot of waves there in the hockey world. It's interesting. One thing we were talking earlier about your season, Paul and I were. And I mentioned that it is different in hockey. Like, I primarily cover football and basketball, and obviously it's different in those sports that you don't have players who've already been picked professionally competing in college, and it is different in hockey. And as we mentioned, you're a first-round pick. And I know, like, your career at Minnesota Duluth, you know, it was a fine start, but I mean, you set the world on fire. You didn't really set it on fire last year either. This is your first truly great year. What is the pressure like of going to college, but being a first-round pick, having that label with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something that's going to stick with you, and you know, people know it, but it's honestly just something you kind of put in the back of your head. You know, I just try to ground myself at college. You know, buy into the team, and you know, your draft position or if you're drafted or not really shouldn't matter too much. Honestly, in college, you just want to. Honestly, I just try to buy into the team. You know, just be one of the guys, and you know, that'll kind of take care of itself later down the road.
Well, it certainly has, and you played so well this year, including the game winner on Saturday to send MSU into the title game, the 1-0 win over Notre Dame. Take us through that play and the game-winning goal.
Yeah, we had a quick power play. You know, I think 25 seconds left or something going into the third, and you know, it was a great pass by Dorwart. Kind of found me in that seam, and you know, just try to rip it on net quick and catch the goalie off guard, and you know, then the building was rocking, and it was a good time.
Yeah, it really worked out well coming out with that little bit of extra power play to start the period, and you guys had a good strategy there to get that game winner. And so now you head into the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State this weekend. Give us a very quick scouting report on the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, we know everyone's gonna play hard at this time of year. You know, we expect a good game. You know, we're both gonna come out there and be ready to go. You know, we get a unique opportunity to win the playoffs again for a back-to-back year, and you know, we're excited and ready to go.
All right, well, Isaac, congratulations. I assume that if you guys win the national championship, we'll get a shot of you hoisting the trophy in the white suit. I would expect nothing less. You got to pull it out.
I wouldn't mind that. Yeah.
All right, hey, congrats, Isaac. Really great year, and best of luck here as you guys go forward in the postseason.
Thank you. Take care.
A look at the big board shows us the 8 Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament when they get things started, including the defending national runner-up Purdue, which will tip things off with High Point on Thursday. As you can see, 4 Big Ten teams get going Thursday, and then 4 on Friday. And here to help us break it down is Trent Meacham. Trent, let's start with the South. Michigan State is the highest seeded Big Ten team. They are the 2 seed. Somewhat inexplicably to me, Michigan is the 5 seed. Despite winning the Big Ten tournament, I certainly thought they should have been higher than a 5. But what do you make of the seedings for each of those teams, the matchups, and again, Auburn at the top of that bracket?
Well, more importantly than the seedings, Dave, is how they're playing. And I think both these teams are playing great. Yes, 5 seed seems pretty high for Michigan, but I know everyone's picking UC San Diego. They force a ton of turnovers. Michigan has struggled with that. We know that. But I really like Michigan in this game. If they take care of the ball, UC San Diego is going to play some zone, a lot of switching. If they're not hesitant and they're aggressive and they dominate the glass, we saw them do that in some games there in Indianapolis. If they do that, I love their chances to advance. The key player there is Trey Donaldson for me. In those 3 wins in Indy, he averaged 12 points, 6.5 assists, and only 1.5 turnovers. That's crucial. If he's playing at a high level, Michigan, they can beat anyone in this tournament. They're a unique team. I also like that. And Michigan State, just love how they're playing. I think this first-round matchup against Bryant, who plays really fast, is going to be a lot of fun. And I wouldn't do that against Michigan State. What I love about them is they play fast, but they don't always shoot fast. And so they're disciplined with that speed. I love their depth moving through this tournament. In round 2, assuming they win, though, both these teams, New Mexico with Donovan Dent, Marquette with Cam Jones, 2 of the best guards in the country. So they're going to have to lock up defensively. Should be good matchups there.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Marquette not playing great down the stretch. They've lost 7 of the last 12. But to your point, yeah, Shaka Smart has a really good team and has one of the best individual players in the country in Jones. Okay, what about the Midwest? You got Purdue, Illinois, and UCLA there. Purdue, to a lot of people, is a very fashionable upset pick. Illinois got to wait for a first 4 opponent. UCLA, of course, playing pretty well down the stretch after a bit of a shaky start in Big Ten play. What do you see there?
Well, I could see all the teams in the Big Ten, Dave, making the Sweet 16. Will it happen? I don't think all eight will. Purdue, High Point's not going to be an easy game. They got a 7-foot center that can battle Trey Kaufman, balanced scoring across the board. Now, they haven't played a power conference school all season. I like Purdue, their experience, Brain Smith controlling the game. I like them advancing. I see them playing Clemson in round 2. I think that game is going to be very tough, but I would not count out the Boilermakers and their experience. For Illinois, which team's going to show up? If they're playing at the top of their game, if they're crashing the glass, if they're not relying on just shooting the three and strong defensively, they could make a run to the Sweet 16 and beyond. They could also lose this first round. So who knows? Xavier's got a lot of experience. And Texas has one of the best freshmen in the country, Trey Johnson, averaging 20 a game. Terrific shooter, big-time player. UCLA, I've liked this team for a couple months now. Ever since Mick Cronin went off on them, they flipped the switch. I know they did not show up against Wisconsin, who was just lights out in Indianapolis, but their depth, their ball pressure, they're, I think using a Daimar a bit more as a difference maker on the inside. So we'll see against Utah State, a good team. But if they can get past them, I think the matchup against Tennessee in round 2, assuming that's what it is, would be two really hard-nosed teams, defensive teams. If UCLA is knocking down shots, they could advance as well. Some great matchups in this region for sure.
We were talking about this on Sunday on our selection show. I mean, the number of really good defensive teams in that region is incredible, particularly given that you've got Houston, which is just outstanding on that end as the number 1 seed. So some really interesting matchups were UCLA to advance there. What about the East region? Wisconsin, I think this was a really important weekend for them, Trent, to get a little bit of confidence back. They didn't play great down the stretch, but make it into the champ game, even though they didn't play all that well there. And then Oregon in there as well. What do you see?
Well, first with Wisconsin, they epitomize why I like Big Ten teams doing well in the NCAA tournament. One, they have star power, and John Tonje. John Blackwell is a pretty good Robin to the Batman there as well. And they have a unique style of play. I just love how they space the floor. The bigs will bring you out. They can shoot it at a high level. They're sound defensively. I think Wisconsin's going to be a really tough out. I don't care who they're playing. Looking at that second round matchup, you look at maybe BYU, a very talented offensive team, shooting team. So that should be a fascinating matchup. First, got to get past Montana. And then Oregon. Look, I think this team can definitely make a run. If they play through Nate Biddle, that's the key. Liberty doesn't have the size to match up with them. Now, I will say Liberty, they play a very slow pace. They also shoot a ton of threes. And that's a recipe for an upset. So can Oregon control the pace? And I think you do that by pressuring defensively and your guards then knowing play through Nate Biddle. If they do that again, I like Dana Altman in March here navigating through this tournament. All these teams, and these two in particular, Wisconsin, Oregon, I like them in the Sweet 16. And then from there, who knows what can happen.
Well, Dana Altman's got a great March history, as we documented all last week. But last 8 NCAA tourney appearances, they've won at least 1 game. So that would at least trend to them getting past Liberty, and then you see what happens from there. The dramatic conclusion of our show coming up. Still got one more Big Ten team we want to talk about. That is the Maryland Terrapins team with a huge upside heading into the dance. Final thoughts on that from Trent straight ahead. As we take a look at the West region, the last one for us to cover here, only one Big Ten team in that region. It is Maryland. They will take on Grand Canyon, a team that finished second in the WAC but won the WAC tourney. Bryce Drew, the head coach there, a guy who's had some NCAA tourney success as a player and some as a coach as well in his career. But let's dive in here to that matchup. What stands out as you see Maryland and the path that the Terps would have?
Well, Grand Canyon, you're looking at them first game. You can't look past anybody. They won a game last year in the NCAA tournament, beat St. Mary's, and gave Alabama a pretty good game in the next round. Tyon Grant Foster had 29 against Alabama, big-time player. So they return NCAA tournament experience and having success on this stage. This is not going to be an easy game. They want to play fast. So I think that just sets up for what's going to be a really enjoyable game to watch. When I look at Maryland, of course, we looked at the starting 5. so talented, but they're going to need somebody else to step up in key moments. We saw that with Jordan Geronimo against, was it Purdue in the Big Ten tournament? They're going to need one of their bench guys to step up in a key moment. I also love their quickness across the board defensively. They can really lock in, and then I feel like this is Derek Queen's moment. He's been very consistent, had just a monster game, Big Ten tournament against Michigan, 31 points, so skilled, so gifted. So I like Maryland moving forward. This is a brutal bracket for them. I think they'll take care of Grand Canyon. Memphis, everybody's picking Colorado State. Not going to be an easy game, but I do see Maryland making the Sweet 16 and having then a big-time matchup against Florida, who plays 10 guys really deep, versus Maryland starting 5 primarily. But their skill and their quickness defensively, they're going to be tough in this tournament.
Yeah, I'm fascinated if we do get to a Florida-Maryland matchup as well, for exactly the reason you talk about. Todd Golden's team's had an incredible year, and one of the reasons is because of how many players they rotate through. We've worried about a little bit for Maryland. I think they allayed some of those concerns with the way that they played in the Big Ten tournament, utilizing the bench somewhat. Great stuff, Trent. Thanks to Cappy as well. We will see you tomorrow on Big Ten Today.